Hello, hello, and welcome. We are so excited to have you here to discuss how to engage and align your teams. As people are joining, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're joining from, and what your role is. We would love to hear from you. While you're all introducing yourselves, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves as well. My name is Mackenzie. I am your host today, as well as one of the presenters. I've been at Lucid for a couple of years now as a senior product marketing manager, and I'm glad to be with you today. We're also joined by Adam Ellsworth, one of our outstanding senior product managers here at Lucid. Adam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello and welcome. Coming to you from our office in Salt Lake Valley. Really glad to be here. Visual activities are quite a passion of mine, and really looking forward to diving into this topic with you today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. And we also are joined by the talented Vishaka Nirmal from our UX design team. Vishaka, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Vishaka. I'm joining from Seattle, and I'm a UX designer here at Lucid. Been working on visual activities for over a year now, and I'm excited to share some really great content we have for you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you all here. We have Derek from Nashville and Megan from South Jordan, Utah. Who else do we have here? We have Ben joining from Ameriprise, senior software engineer. Ray, Scrum Master at Arrivo Acceptance. Just so happy to see you all popping into the chat and introducing yourselves. It should be a great conversation today. Before we get started, I just wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so you can expect an email with a link to that recording within the next day or two, and that will be sent to the email that you used to register for this webinar. This email will also include some additional resources for you to follow up afterward. And many of you are already participating via chat. We love to see it. Keep it up. We want to hear from you. Feel free to use the chat feature on Zoom anytime as we go along and share your thoughts. Make sure you're sending to everyone. That said, if you do have specific questions for the Lucid team, please use the Q&A feature, and this will make sure your questions get directed to the team that's running the tech in the background, and we'll try and answer as many of those questions as we can. And last but not least, live captions are enabled for this webinar, so you can go ahead and turn those on if you'd like. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's jump in. As I said, we're so excited to talk about how visual activities can help you encourage participation and increase alignment on your teams. We initially created visual activities to make it easier for you to collect feedback and engage your team members, whether that's during live meetings or asynchronously. And one of the most important pain points that we wanted to solve with visual activities is the alignment gap that we found on many different teams. Lucid actually commissioned a workplace alignment survey of knowledge workers globally to discover more about these alignment gaps. And these are a few of our findings. 47% of survey respondents reported that some projects fail to meet their objectives due to alignment issues, and 46% express annoyance or frustration as a direct result of misalignment. Perhaps worst of all, talented staff members are leaving organizations due to alignment problems, and 36% of our respondents reported this being the case. So as you can see, alignment is really a huge issue that spans all levels of organizations, and visual activities helps close that alignment gap by facilitating faster decision-making, which helps teams keep up the momentum and take quick action toward key business goals. They help gather every perspective, and they aggregate data with the click of a button. And these features are all key to driving alignment. I will turn it over to Adam to talk more about what visual activities are. Take it away, Adam.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So what are visual activities, exactly? And for those of you who might not have tried these yet, let's just dive in and take a quick look at what a visual activity really is. So it's like a visual survey or a poll right on your canvas. And you can use a visual activity to gather qualitative feedback, turn these into quantitative data and actual insights. And they can take many forms. It can look like a sliding scale or a matrix or a set of categories for a card sorting activity. And each participant gets an individual view of the activity. Their responses when they submit them are all aggregated, and then the results are there for everyone to see and determine that insight. So let's take a look at how you go about setting up a visual activity. Let's say we're here in Lucidspark. You can find the visual activity gallery right here underneath this rocket ship icon. It's also in the Lucidchart canvas and our team spaces as well. And in this example, let's say we have these 3 priorities that we want to, or 3 initiatives that we want to prioritize rather. So we can search the gallery here for a prioritization activity, helps to spell it right. And let's add this here to the canvas. Going to setup mode, all these activities can be edited, kind of to your heart's desire, including changing the title, access or category labels, and certainly in adding and customizing your content. Here's an options bank. It's a great place to add objects that you want to become interactive. And you may have noticed this green little hint here, letting you know that this is something that can be interacted with while participants are inside the activity. So this activity is looking pretty good. We can publish those changes, and I'm just going to jump in and start it. So here's my individual view as a participant, and can take a look at these 3 initiatives and prioritize them right here. So we have an add to cart quantity bug fix that seems fairly important. Page load speed improvements. I think we're doing pretty good. And what about testing the migration to a new payment processor? That seems pretty important. So I can submit my responses there, along with everyone else in the in the team. Let's head back to the document real quick, and we can just go to an example of that same activity that has some results. It'll be a little bit more instructive. So by viewing the results, I can take a look at kind of this average view, as well as like what each individual participant responded, and take a look at kind of a scatter plot of where there's alignment. It seems like we have a lot of alignment in this as like a really important bug, which is great. Let's take a look at migrating to the new payment processor. Wow. Rick, not to call you out, but wow, it looks like a little bit of an outlier. Here's the opportunity to see like maybe Rick is aware of something that we're not aware of. And as an engineering manager, Rick often is. And perhaps there's been a change to the timeline of the project or something. And here's an opportunity to see like, oh, we're not quite aligned, and investigate further. So this just kind of gives you a quick taste of how to use a visual activity to collect insight and collect feedback and find insights to drive efficient conversations in your work. And now that you all seen one in real life, let's chat a little bit more about a few of the core use cases that we think you'll find valuable. Mackenzie?
Thanks for sharing, Adam. It's so cool for me to see this capability in action. And I know a lot of our customers have already found tons of value in visual activities since it launched last year. Now that you've all seen how visual activities work, let's chat about a few of the core use cases that we think you might find most valuable as you seek to drive alignment in your own organizations. Adam, do you want to walk us through the first 2 use cases?
Yes, happy to. You're stuck with me for a little bit longer. So our first use case that we want to talk about is for increasing engagement during meetings and workshops. I think it's fair to say that video conferencing is a little bit of a 2-edged sword. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. It really enables us to have distributed teams across the globe, and it was fun seeing how many of you from all over have joined. That's exciting, and what a miracle of modern technology, but it can often come with a few challenges. So real quick, an audience question for y'all. What are some of the difficulties you've had collaborating over video conferencing and video calls in your day-to-day? Curious to Paying attention, right? Yeah, people talking over each other for sure. Multitasking. Everyone that has a boss knows the pain of someone multitasking in a meeting. Being inclusive, engagement, and distraction. Yeah, I've seen the chat light up here. Nice to know that I'm not alone, and neither are any of you. And this is why we're doing what we're doing here at Lucid and with visual activities. So just kind of highlighting a couple of these that you all have as well. In multitasking, being distracted by notifications and maybe even happenings at home. Like we're all at our computers. We have Slack or Teams or Google Chat and email popping up all throughout a meeting. And we're not face to face, and we're all social creatures, as humans, and it's much harder to engage, just staring at a screen. So we hear you. We felt the pain, and we're hoping that visual activities can help solve some of these problems. Especially my least favorite, that feeling like you're just here talking to the void. Like, is anyone out there? Like, hello. Thank you for jumping in the chat and being such an engaged group today. So let's talk about like, well, how does visual activities help with this situation? Well, first, it's a great way to kick off a meeting with something fun or a thought-provoking icebreaker question, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that next. Second, mid-meeting, to kind of check the pulse of how the team is feeling, a quick question to bring everyone around the activity and understand like their sentiment and understanding, gauging if they're following the content or how they're thinking about the problem as the discussion emerges. And at the end, especially gathering feedback overall about this webinar, this meeting, this activity that you all have had, so that you can take those learnings forward into the next one and learn and improve. Let's take an example, and let's just say, we're a member of the accounting team, and we're here with a colleague from the learning and development team, and we're going through a training for our operations group on a new expense reporting system that we've transitioned to, as well as some like policies that we've updated. And so we might kick off this meeting with this icebreaker here. This one's called controversial food opinions. I don't think it should be controversial that fruit does belong on pizza. I'm a huge fan of Hawaiian with pineapple, but that is of quite, I think debated here hotly at Lucid as well. But this activity, just to kind of get the juices flowing, make use of those first few minutes, get people focused here on the board and in the meeting. And as we go through and presenting the content, maybe mid-meeting, it's opportunity to present a low pop quiz. So let's take a look at what this activity is. Maybe asking people to plot on this axis a few of these questions. Some a review of the content that we've presented already, and others maybe some fun guesses. So the number of employee reimbursement requests each month, that might be fun. Or the max amount you don't need a receipt for. And everyone will have the opportunity to respond as they join the activity and participate in that. Fun way to engage there. And at the end of the meeting, this is one of my favorite templates. Take a look at this one. It's a before and after retrospective. So, as a presenter, I want to get better at my job and making sure that I'm effectively communicating. So reaching out to the team and saying like, hey, before and after this workshop, how comfortable were you with this, expense reporting process, engaging and making sure that we're really making a difference, and then perhaps being able to follow up with others about the responses and collect more information. Or if it's maybe more of a sensitive question, you can make the activity anonymous. And that way, when people participate, they're doing so like without their name, and it's a way to get a little bit more free responses when there's a sensitive topic. And that's just an example of how you might layer visual activities into a meeting to increase engagement. And would recommend that you try some of those out on one of your next ones. So our second use case is fostering, team connection or team building. Kind of goes hand in glove with engagement in video conferencing. It's a little bit harder to create these relationships just over, video. So why use visual activities or icebreakers in this way? for team building or for fun? Well, we mentioned it was a great way to warm up the group for the start of a meeting, but they also spark meaningful conversations sometimes. And this is like one of my most enjoyable uses for sure, and really helps you get to like to know the team, your teammates, how they think, what they've done, a little bit about them, and to build a more connected, inclusive team culture. Especially, not everyone's always comfortable kind of jumping into the fray and voicing their opinion, but in a visual activity, we're kind of in this individual space. It's an opportunity to contribute, and there's just a context and something to talk about in the results that is a little more natural, and it can elicit responses for people that maybe are a little more introspective. So let's take an example, or look at a couple of example icebreaker and kind of fun templates. This one's 2 truths and a lie, kind of a classic game. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's where maybe everyone in the team or sample would have an opportunity to write down 2 truths about themselves and then a lie. And then when everyone takes it, they would then categorize them as like, oh, I think Adam's lying about this, or he's telling the truth here. I put 3 here. I was hospitalized after being bitten by a poisonous lizard. I can speak 3 languages, and I can't touch my toes. I'll give you a hint. I'm 6'4", and had quite the growth spurt in junior high, and I've never looked back. So that one's definitely true. And brownie points to anyone that can guess between the other 2 which one is the lie. But that's an example of an activity that'd be fun to take as a team. Here's another classic. It's the zombie apocalypse. Who would you want as your sidekick, or the world ever to be overrun with zombies? Grew up on the Star Wars movies, partial to Yoda. Also a great conversationalist. So that would be a pick of mine. And then maybe one a little bit more thought-provoking and discussion starting. What are your favorite books? I want to jump in and actually participate on this one. I love this template. I think it's really clever. I read The Count of Monte Cristo, way more depressing than the movie, but I thought it was quite moving. I have started Moby Dick maybe 4 or 5 times, and I just can't get past like the first 50 pages. I know it's a classic, but it's not for me. And so opportunity to kind of mark like, what's your top shelf, honorable mention or not for you, and submit those responses. So here's an example of just a couple of icebreaker activities. Well, I want to share a pro tip here for you. It's not so much about the activity itself, albeit they are fun. It's really about the conversations that they can start. And so taking the time in results, asking people, why do you think that? Or like, have you ever had this? Like, this is actually really good. You should try pineapple on your pizza. It's really about getting that conversation started and taking some time in your meetings throughout the week to connect with your team members. And so that's something that we'd encourage you to do. Here, just one example at Lucid, we had an all hands kind of department meeting a while back, and used the French fry Olympics activity. We had 185 responses or so, and it was quite the debate. So this is what this looked like, and it was about ranking your favorite French fry from various restaurants. I know that doesn't maybe land with everyone around the world. Americans, we love our hamburgers and fries, but obviously it could be customized to your desires, and it will be more relevant for you. But you can see kind of the responses were all over the map in this one. And like I mentioned, just immense engagement. It took 3 minutes to get 185 people in there participating, and there was like 91 comments in Slack, and lots of emojis and reactions, and it was a fun time just to connect in what otherwise might be a chance that a lot of people are kind of tuning out in a meeting. And so that was just an example from Lucid. We really encourage you that you try sprinkling icebreakers, at the beginning or end of your meetings, or perhaps in the middle, and especially with like your core team where you're spending a lot of time, and use them to foster that connection and engender like deeper conversations, or you get to learn a little bit more about the people you work with. And I'm sure you'll be like me, surprised at the depth of like the interests and passions and abilities of the people around you. And so that's a little bit about team building. And I'll turn it over to Vishaka to talk a little bit about how she uses visual activities in her day-to-day.
Awesome. Those icebreakers are always super fun. Hi all, I'm excited to walk you through our third use case for today, gathering feedback. We'll go over some of my favorite uses for visual activities outside of icebreakers, where you're able to get quantitative and qualitative feedback in this visual format. So why gather feedback at all? As a UX designer, it's important to gather that feedback from a variety of stakeholders, users, and peers. Specifically at Lucid, we really rely on gathering feedback through visual activities, which give us some really valuable insights on everyone's individual opinions. There's so many valuable individual thoughts out there to share, and in the fields of research and design, it's really our job to uncover those insights, but it can be hard to gather both quantitative and qualitative feedback in a meaningful way. So I'm excited to showcase ways that we can easily source and streamline all of those insights using visual activities. So throughout these examples, you'll see how your users, your stakeholders, and your peers can visually showcase their opinions and stay engaged with your feedback sessions. First off, I often run user surveys to gather quick thoughts and ratings for conceptual features. When I'm looking for this feedback, I really just need a Vista 5 type rating, which I usually accomplish with something like a Likert scale. But text-based ratings often lack the context and full understanding of a brand new shiny concept that I'm working with. In this example, visual activities can help spice up this type of rating scale. You can use GIFs to showcase complex functionality, and in participant mode, each participant can move the slider to their exact liking. Once I submit my responses, in results, I can see a scatterplot distribution of all of those responses. And if you're looking to dive into the data, you can export all of those details into a CSV and get the numerical values associated with this scale. The next example I'll showcase is particularly useful when mapping out complex features. In this space, it's necessary to gather some quantitative feedback on how stakeholders or users think about the information architecture of a product's offerings and where things should be placed. In this card sorting example, we used a closed card sorting exercise to figure out how we could present each of our visual activity template offerings. Here, in participant mode, each person can move items into the category that they think each feature should belong within. Activities can be used as a really powerful way to see each participant's mental model. I think all of these things belong in this category for project planning. So once I submit my response and go over to results, I can take a look at where each person placed all of those items. And I can take a look at the objects view and also see some agreement there as well. Another example I'll go through helps me to gather some qualitative visual feedback. Activities can be a great way to gather some visual preference tests, understanding what resonates and what doesn't with users. In this example, we were designing icons for the visual activities feature, and early on, we had a lot of different explorations on what the rocket icon could look like. In order to crowdsource that feedback, we got people across the company to rank each of these items to their preference, deciding which one made most sense for them as a rocket. And in results, we can take a look at where each person ranked each item or go through individual responses to see what each person thought of all of the different icons. Our last example that I'll go through today is this qualitative feedback activity, which is one of my favorites. When you're looking for quick feedback on the usability of a concept, specifically knowing where a user may click first on a mock, using a visual activity can be a really fun and engaging way to provide some great insights. This activity, originally created by another UX designer on our team, allows us to visually understand some user mental models. The activity asks users to move the cursor to wherever they click on that mock. And in results, we can take a look at, again, a scatterplot distribution of where each person is going to put their cursor and click. So this is a really fun activity to try out with just a static mock. Overall, when we're gathering feedback at Lucid, we often rely on visual activities. We're able to get some really great insights from surveying those user opinions, running card sorting activities, running visual preference exercises, and also usability tests. And through hosting both these quantitative and qualitative activities, we're able to quickly develop and gather feedback on our work. It's been absolutely game-changing having this tool, and I'm excited for you all to try it in your day-to-day work. As I pass it back over to Mackenzie, I'd love to see any thoughts in the chat. Are you using visual activities for gathering feedback yet? And if you aren't yet, hopefully this gave you some ideas of how you might use it in the future. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mackenzie.
Thanks, Vishaka. I am going to share a little bit about our fourth use case for visual activities. And before I dive into that, I will say that we've been getting a question about whether you can go back and change your activities or reset, or change your responses or reset an activity. I'm going to show a little bit about that in my demonstration here, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. So hopefully we can get that question answered. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how visual activities can help you plan and organize a new project. I'm sure we all know from experience that project planning can get really messy, especially when there are lots of variables in play. And I'll show how visual activities can really simplify that process and make the path forward crystal clear when it comes to planning and kicking off a project. So I'll run you through a mock planning session. Let's say in this scenario that we have a marketing team that is preparing to launch a new marketing campaign. First, as a first step, they might brainstorm all of the potential channels that they might use in order to incorporate into this campaign. And unfortunately, this team does not have enough resources to execute on all of the wonderful ideas on this list. So what I'm going to do is pull these ideas into a visual activity. So I'm going to add a visual activity here in the contextual toolbar. And I'm going to go with an impact and effort matrix and add that to the board. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this activity. And I'm going to, instead of calling it impact and effort, I'm actually going to call it reach and cost, because unfortunately we don't have an unlimited budget in this marketing campaign. So need to know how we're going to get the most bang for a buck. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and publish my changes and start the activity. And I can pull my stickies over and populate this activity and submit my responses. And this is where I can see if I wanted to go back and change my response. And I say, you know, I actually think that a landing page is really an incremental win and not an easy win. So that's an easy way to go back and change my responses. And then I can view my results. And I'm actually going to go to a different part of the board here where I have a little bit more results populated for us to work with. So here I have a few results on the board. I can see some of my easy wins and my big bets, and maybe those that fall down into the money pit category or the incremental category, co-marketing opportunities, sales enablement, maybe those will go lower down on the priority list. And I'm going to go ahead and add these results to the board so that I can manipulate them and carry them forward into the next part of my workflow. As I said before, budget is not unlimited. So maybe as a next step, what I want to do is prioritize these marketing channels and determine what's the highest priority and where I really want to spend my investment. And so I can pull these top winners that are going to be the highest, have the highest impact. And again, I can add my results to the board. And what I might do here is convert these. So I have my tasks that we want to execute on, and I might just pull these onto the board here and convert them to Asana tasks, because I think, well, it's time for us to get started and it's time for us to get working on these. So I'm going to convert these to Asana tasks and add them to my marketing campaign and create those tasks. And now we're ready to go. The team's ready to execute on this marketing campaign, and knowing that the team is fully aligned and the campaign will have the highest possible impact. And with that, I will hand it back to Adam to talk about how visual activities can support the execution phase. Adam, if you wouldn't mind also speaking to how visual activities, to who can access visual activities. That's another question that we're getting in the chat.
Yeah, that's a great one. So visual activities are accessible by every type of user. Now, there are some more premium templates for some of the higher packages, but basically the core functionality of everything that you've seen so far and exporting results is all available to everyone. And if you're the level of user where you can share with guests, even guests are able to join a board or a Lucidchart document and participate in an activity. So hopefully that answers that question. And I think there was one about resetting an activity. That's an interesting request that we've gotten. Definitely someone we're looking at as far as like our roadmap and backlog. The quick hack or work way around for that is if you copy an activity and paste it, it is now blank. Like the results only ever stay in the actual activity that people took. So hopefully that was helpful. And let me know if that didn't answer your question and we can follow up in the chat. All right. Well, let's talk about collaborative decision-making. This is something near and dear to my heart. And as a product manager, one of the core aspects of my job is really making decisions about what we should build and when we should build it, and then getting alignment across those decisions with the key stakeholders and members of the team and maybe even other teams. Visual activities offer me a chance to do both, making the decision together and getting input as well as driving alignment, and kind of a 2-for-1, if you will. You know how the phrase goes, like 2 minds are better than one. Well, what about 5 or 10 or 100? Visual activities really help you crowdsource and get a lot of input. But with that, they can be sometimes tricky, and all the conflicting opinions and back and forth across stakeholders and affected teams when making important decisions. It can lead a little bit to chaos and oftentimes analysis paralysis if you let it. But visual activities kind of help you balance the two and thread the needle, if you will, where you can efficiently collect the input and you can use the results to show where there's already alignment and efficiently guide the discussion where time is better spent, maybe where there's elements of disagreement, and discuss those remaining differences and reach that eventual alignment. And then at the end, you can export the results as we've seen, and you have an exhibit kind of documenting the steps in the process of how you decided. I think, Mackenzie, that workflow that you showed is really instructive of, looking at impact and effort and then taking the top, most important ones and layering on kind of budget and trying to get like the most impactful and prioritize those. It's great to have like a decision log of what's gone into where you're at, and is quite useful. So thank you for showing us that. Let me talk a little bit about a recent example of how I use a visual activity for visual activities. Like Vishaka said, it's something that we use frequently. And on the visual activities team here, probably more than most. So this was just last week. So hot off the presses, there's a new feature that we're considering for this next fiscal year building, but it's an expensive one. It's one we've got a lot of user requests on, and it's going to unlock a new chunk of like use cases. But there's lots of different potential directions that we could take it, and they all have different consequences. Some are kind of introducing new patterns into our product, and there are pros and cons to each. It was been tricky talking with those affected teams and their various stakeholders, and also after 4 rounds of user research and interviews and surveys and design sessions, we really didn't have a clear winner, and we narrowed it down to kind of 4 divergent approaches. Well, in our check-in with our stakeholder group, we made a board, and this is this is a screenshot from it. This is the actual board, and on this board, we laid out each of the 4 options at the top here, with a brief description of each one, and then some example mocks just to help kind of encapsulate this idea. so that everyone was clear on what we were talking about. We had preceded the board with a set of pros and cons for each of the approach, and across sort of three different vectors of business value, user value, and technical feasibility. And after presenting these four options, we gave everyone on the board a few minutes to read through the pros and cons and kind of add some of their own that maybe we had missed and came to their mind. And then with a direct share link, linked everyone to a visual activity to take once they've had that context to get their feedback. And these are the actual results. As you can see, they're kind of neck and neck, which is how we were feeling about it internally as a team. But two things were sort of achieved from this. This discussion exhibit really helped our stakeholders understand the nuance of what was going into the various approaches and helped them adjust some of their feedback, iterate on it. And the discussion was really, effective by having this all laid out and where we can see everyone's opinions and where everyone stands. And we were able to choose a path forward to continue researching, designing, and eventually developing on. And this is just an example of the many times where visual activities kind of come in handy and are one of our tools that we turn to often to drive alignment while also collecting, differing opinions and feedback. Great example from last week. So I just wanted to recap a couple of things for tips to help you get great results from activities. You might find, your first couple stuff didn't quite go the way that you wanted. And so here's a few pro tips from that, that I found that are helpful. Not always, but often, especially with like deeper, more weighty decisions, try to limit your option set to less than 10, with like 4 to 8 being a sweet spot. Any more than that, and it's kind of hard to keep all of the, mentally juggle all of the different ideas. It's kind of why like phone numbers are 7 digits, if you will, same sort of principle there. Second, try to set context, really spend the time to make things clear and establish a shared understanding of the ideas that you're talking about. Nothing skews results more than somebody thinking that something was actually something else and then plotting or categorizing it wrongly. And then give participants time to digest the material and really get into the mind space of the problem so that the quality of the feedback is greater. And then within the activity, provide very clear prompts of like what they're trying to do and labels to the axes so that everyone's kind of using the same measuring stick as they plot the ideas or categorize them. So clarity in the activity, it's worth taking an extra minute or two so that as everyone else is spending their time providing you with feedback, like you're getting the results that you want. So just wanted to pause for a quick question here. Also, I'm going to be collecting this for ideas for new templates. So curious, like what decision-making exercises or frameworks are you all using? It doesn't have to be a visual activity, but are you using and turn to often in your day-to-day? Like how are you making decisions? What are rubrics or processes that you use to evaluate different ideas as it relates to your areas of work? Curious to hear from you all. Yeah, 2x2 matrix is a big one. See, double diamond. Using the org chart as an exhibit. And talking through it right on the org chart itself. Effort versus impact, that's that one that we love for sure. The rose thorn, I've seen that. I know we have a rose thorn template, but I've never actually, I don't even know what that's about. I've just seen it in the gallery. So I'll have to take a look at that one. That's interesting. Appreciate the rice method. That's a classic. Thank you, Julie. We'll definitely review this after the fact and mine this for some good ideas about other decision-making templates that we can add.
Adam, we're also seeing a few responses with surveys and ranking, and I think those are really closely aligned with what visual activities accomplish and how you can really get a quick pulse of what everyone's thinking, almost like a one-question survey.
Yeah, right, exactly. And now I see James AHP. I'm curious what the acronym stands for. I'm not familiar with that one. If you have a second, would love to hear. Okay, so we've already shown a few decision-making templates, but I want I want to show you just two more of my favorites that I turn to often in product and hope will be useful to you all as well. The first is the now, next, later kind of framework. We use this for taking a first pass at refining a backlog or maybe a group of ideas into different value chunks that we might deliver, or getting clarity on where to prioritize our time. All of our time is limited, right? And where to focus a team. And then often paired with that, above the line, below the line. So there's a threshold. It could be budget, it could be personnel and team resources. But when deciding the scope of a release, like maybe what really is the minimum viable product, or which strategic objectives of all the things that we could focus on ought we to focus on, above the line and below the line comes in handy. So this is a now, next, later. Taking a look at it. There's a pretty simple structure. It's a categorization activity. And if you were to join this, you could plot, the classic sort of evolution of product from skateboard to a car, like what we have to focus on now, next, and later. And everyone have an opportunity to kind of categorize those, and then you can view the results and see like, okay, most people are aligning on this is the thing that we really need to do now. Well, a second part of that decision-making process, it comes down to then like resource constraints. And that's where determining like what initiatives or ideas really make the cut and are above the line versus below the line really comes into play. And we've been going through our next kind of fiscal year planning. I'm sure as many of you have been, and we do so like every quarter as well. And this is one that is frequently turned to, and we would recommend that you try out. So that's above the line and below the line. What makes the cut based off of some like scarcity or limitation or threshold that needs to be met. I really love using visual activities and making decisions, and this is perhaps my most frequent go-to use case, and was glad to share that with you. And Mackenzie, over to you now to wrap up.
Thanks, Adam. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much to both Adam and Vishaka for joining us today and getting an in-depth look at how leaders can engage their teams, collect feedback, and act on insights has been extremely helpful. We want to close out by taking a few questions. Before we do, we just have a few resources for those who want to dive deeper. First, we have a link to a blog post that our team created that goes more into depth in these use cases as well as a few others. It's really comprehensive. I recommend checking it out. Thank you, Tayan, for just posting a link in the chat as well. For more information, just general information on visual activities specifically, you can check out our landing page, which is also linked in the chat, and you will receive an email later with these resources as well. So lots of opportunities to learn more. And with that, it's time for some questions. Thank you to those of you who have submitted questions so far. Please use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask our speakers any more questions, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can. A couple that have come up throughout the webinar so far are, can you comment during a visual activity? And I'm curious, Adam, if you wanted to speak a little bit about how interaction works during a visual activity.
Yeah, I wish. That's another idea on the backlog and something that we'd hope to get to at some point. Right now, you can't add like any annotations or the comment feature inside the activity itself. So one of the things that we often do as a workaround, really like that commenting and collaboration is kind of best on the canvas as opposed to inside the activity. And so often we'll add a frame or a container right next to the activity and say like, leave comments or additional thoughts here. And then it's an opportunity for people to go through the activity, take it, and then leave a bunch of feedback, people to comment on it, emoji, etc. And so it's something that someday we'd like to support, but for now, that commenting, well, we do internally on the canvas, adjacent to the activity.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question that we're seeing is, how does a guest access visual activities? Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, better yet, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
You are.
Why don't I just show you? So let's add a visual activity real quickly. Best vegetable. That's an interesting one. I think Zach designed this one. This is also surprisingly controversial. Turns out people love their vegetables. So how sharing works is with this content being on the board, you're really sharing the board. So you can click this link here to get sort of a shortcut to our shared dialogue and copy a link that will deep link someone to the activity. But it mirrors kind of the sharing permissions that are in the board already. And so if I wanted to share a guest link, I would need to come here and enable this board for guests. And then when I copy that link to the visual activity, it will copy it with guest permissions available. And when it's shared, then anyone, you're basically making the document completely public, but then anyone can come in and participate in the activity. And if we have a second, actually, oh, actually, I have this all super minified. Anyway, try this out on your own, copy the link. And it's really also great to kind of preview pulling up the link in like another browser tab or whatever to see that immersive experience and just double check that the activity is looking good, before you share it out. But that's how you do it. It's tied to the board permissions. And this is sort of a shortcut here to share the activity. So hopefully that was helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Another question that we're seeing is, can you collect answers in a spreadsheet?
Yes, Vishaka, I think you mentioned a little bit about that. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, Vishaka, you did.
Yeah, in results, once you have collected all of your responses in the top right corner, you'll be able to see a button that says export to CSV. And that will allow you to get all of the details based on whether it was an activity that was ranking or a categorization activity. You'll get some details on where people place that within that ranking or within those categories.
Exactly. One pro tip there. We did our best to try to make that data extract meaningful, but you can imagine that an image of a red bell pepper doesn't translate super well to a comma separated file in a text field. So if you're doing image-based like heavy visual activities, adding some text in a group with a shape or something will really help that data be more identifiable for your use in like further analysis. But yeah, thanks Vishak for walking us through there. And I just realized that looking at this like image only activity, that was a perfect example to kind of call out. This one would be a little bit tricky to understand the data without some labels.
Beautiful. Thank you. One other question is, are there any surprising or creative ways that you've seen teams use visual activities that go beyond traditional polls? And I know Adam and Vishaka, you both have demonstrated some of those kind of creative ways, but maybe we can revisit one or two of those kind of unusual use cases for visual activities.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it depends on what you mean by a poll, but I guess by its very nature, you're asking people for for an opinion or feedback. One that's not quite a poll, but is like user sentiment. So I like to think of myself as a nice person, but as a product manager, I always want more from my team, right? More. Sorry, Sean, Vishaka. After the holidays, we've been pushing out, working on a couple of big releases, and wanted to kind of check the pulse of the team. And so did an anonymous activity like, hey, where are you at? Like, battery kind of energy level. How's the team feeling as we're making this like last push? And also in thinking about planning the roadmap for, Q1, being able to kind of talk with leadership and, defend the team and look at resources and whatnot. And so, I mean, I'm asking for their input, but it's not really a poll. It's more like, hey, tell me where you're really at. And it was great to see kind of a spread, of results and understand kind of based on the pace of like where we've been building and designing, where the team was at, and kind of take that information and run with it. So that's one that it's not more like which do you like better, but it's like, hey, honestly, like where are you at? An anonymous activity, kind of collecting the team's energy levels. That was one that came to my mind just from the last couple of weeks. Vishaka, any come to you?
Yeah, I think for me, the most unusual ones I've seen and most exciting ones are probably in the icebreakers category. I know Adam went through a couple of them, but in this space of team building, you'll see some really crazy ideas of what activities could be, where you're ranking chocolates or agreeing with statements or looking at French fries. So I think those are pretty fun, and I'd recommend checking those out if you're looking for a fun way to get your team engaged.
And that actually leads us into another question, which is how do you get to these visual activity templates? And Adam, you're showing us the menu here, and maybe you can talk us through a little bit about what you're showing us and how you're in Lucidspark and just kind of how you navigate through the visual activities templates.
Yeah, totally. So we're in a Lucidspark board, and you can see like the toolbar here over to the left. Click on this, opens up the gallery. It's broken up into several categories. So if you wanted to say, take a look at meetings and workshops, that's something that we talked a lot about. You could do so here, and templates that are in that category would show up. You can also search, which I did for that prioritization activity. I see above the line, below the line there, urgency and importance. And clicking on this it gives you a preview of what the activity might look like in participation. And if you want to see like results to see like, is it the type of thing that I'd want to add, what the results view would look like, as well as, description and some further tags. So if I wanted to do maybe like ranking, like, oh, I like that, you can click on ranking and it will, populate the search for you to look for other ranking activities. Also in the left toolbar of Lucidchart, you'll see visual activities there as well. So you can see it here in this toolbar. But I'll jump back over to Lucidspark Canvas. Yeah, see a question about any differences using them with no. It works exactly the same functionality across all the Canvas apps. So you want to relearn any patterns, and it all behaves exactly the same way.
Wonderful. Well, I think those are most of the questions that we've had come through. Any other burning questions before we sign off? Here's one. If there was one thing that you wish you knew about sooner with visual activities, what would that one thing be? Where you say, gosh, I wish I knew this right at the beginning. And maybe we can hear from both of you on this one if there's something that comes to mind.
I can take this one first. I think the biggest thing that's helpful for me in my workflow is when you share an activity link, you can either share the board where you'll have those activities on there, or you can share a direct link where participants are going straight into that activity with no other context. And so it's helpful to, if you want to send that over Slack or in Zoom, it really gets them right into that visual activity immediately. And I think that's pretty helpful for a seamless experience.
Thanks for showing that, Adam. While Vishaka is talking, what would you add?
Yeah, mine, maybe this isn't what you intended in your question, but mine was, this is really a new thing for us at Lucid. Like the idea of a visual activity is kind of an app within an app. And one of the things I wish I would have known ahead of time was how to help users better understand this new paradigm. I think there were a couple of points of like usability and friction that we just didn't anticipate. And when you've been staring at something for so long, you kind of become blind, and you lose that beginner's mind, which is always a tricky thing, in product development. But we've recently released some work in and around these overlays and how they should hopefully help users better understand like how to engage with a visual activity, especially in the initial setup of an activity. So that's the thing that I'm kicking myself for and in release is a couple of decisions that I wish would have been made another way, but maybe that wasn't what you were looking for. But
No, that's perfect. And I would actually add one more of my own things that I wish I'd known right out of the gate with visual activities, and that is that they're so easy to use. I know we've thrown a lot of information at you today. We've been clicking through all these visual activities, and it maybe has been a little bit overwhelming, but really when you use one yourself, you realize that it's really simple to put one together and really powerful to suddenly see a visual representation of exactly what everybody thinks. It can be something fun, like ranking vegetables to spark a conversation. It can be something like solving a business project, a business question. It can be something really, really meaty across the spectrum. But whatever your use case, whatever you're doing, whatever meeting you're having, whatever conversation you're having, a visual activity just brings that visual element and helps everyone communicate so much more easily because you can see exactly what everybody thinks. And that's one of my favorite things about visual activities. And I wish that I'd understood that right out of the gate and started using them more in my own work and in my own life. So that's our invitation to you, is to try them out, use visual activities, play around with them. We've tried to design them to be really easy, really fun, really engaging. And as you can see, useful across such a variety. I mean, the sky's the limit, really. There really is no end to the possible applications for visual activities. So thank you all so much for joining us. It's been delightful to be together, and we look forward to connecting in the future. Thank you so much.